So here we go. So I just started the recording. So let's learn about the basics of this. I'll be sharing my screen, but it's a really awesome class about what I just spoke about this meal that's going to happen with the coming of Mashiach. So we're going to explore a grand feast. This feast is, you've seen nothing yet. Even Adina's feasts that she's made, if you come to her home for Shabbos or for any other occasion, there's delicious food. But still, and I guess I'll say this even on record, it'll pale in comparison to what's going to be served at this meal. So whether you're vegetarian or pescatarian, and we all have our limits or our diets, and that's fine, but there'll be a special fish that we're going to be eating, and it's going to be 100% kosher, and it's going to fit our diets. It's called the Leviathan, and a shor habar, which is a type of ox. And we're going to learn about this. We're going to see some really cool things about them, and a very special type of wine. And we're going to be eating, drinking, feasting, and we're going to have a meal. So it sounds quite strange. We're going to learn about it. What exactly is this Leviathan, this big fish? And what is this shor habar? What does it mean to me anyway? So during our class this evening, we're going to be learning about this feast. And of course, the most important part is, what does it mean to me? How do I participate in it? And not just in the physical meal, but spiritually, what does it mean in my life? What can I learn from this? And how could I use this in my life? So we're going to start with some sources. If you're looking in a book, it's on page 65, but have no fear, I'll be sharing my screen. And to broaden the picture of this meal, and Gail, I see you're just joining, so we're going to be learning some Talmud about a very special meal that's going to happen when Mashiach comes, a feast that we're going to learn about. So it says that before when Mashiach comes, the Leviathan, this big fish, will have a fight. If you ever went to the zoo and you saw them at the exact moment, you see an ox fighting and they're putting their horns in each other. So it says this big fish, Leviathan, will have a fight with this ox, which is called the shor habar. And ultimately, with its fins, it's going to slaughter the ox. But before the Leviathan will get a chance to do that final slice with its fin and kill the shor habar, the latter, the ox, the shor habar, will lacerate and kill the fish with its horns. So each one has its kind of weapon, the fin, the horn. If you ever saw on YouTube, there's a famous clip of two boxers that they each laid a fist on the other at the exact same time, and they actually knocked each other out. So there was no winner of the fight. Anyone knows what I'm talking about? I don't know. It's on YouTube. It's like a famous clip. I'm not into boxing. I don't understand how that's even a sport, but it's just one of those viral clips. It's actually quite funny while sad at the same time. But the point is that they're both going to be taking care of each other or defending each other by taking care of the other one. And those two animals, the fish as well as the shor, the ox, a nice steak, will be served at this meal to the tzaddikim, to the righteous. I'm not making it up. Let's look at the source together. I'll be sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see it now. Let me make this a little bigger.
Yes, we can see it.
Awesome. Thank you. And why does this not get big? Hold on 1 second. Sorry, everyone. It doesn't want to get big. Let me just... There we go. Okay, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So we're going to learn today about the grand banquet. We'll start with the basics. So this text will be from the Midrash, which is the commentary on the Torah, written by the sages. And the basics, here we go. Maddie, I have you first on the screen. If I could have you read the basics.
Rabbi Yudan said, in the name of Rabbi Shimon, the behemoth and the Leviathan will be game for the righteous in the world to come. How are they slaughtered? The behemoth gores the Leviathan with its horns and shreds it, and the Leviathan impales the behemoth with its fins and slaughters it.
Awesome. And the behemoth is the Hebrew word for animal, like a behema, which you've maybe heard in our Tanya class, the nefesh habahamit, which is the animal soul. Over here, it's referring to this big ox. And I think this is part of the same text. Continue.
The sages asked, is this a kosher slaughtering? The Mishnah states, all may slaughter, and with any implement one may slaughter, except a scythe, a saw, teeth, or a fingernail, since these strangle. Rabbi Avin said in the name of Bar Kahana, God says, for new teachings shall go forth from me. Novel parts of Torah will go forth from me.
Cool. And one more part. Hold on one second. Actually, this is text 2. So let me just make sure I got the whole text in there. Yeah, Rabbi Avin said that's an interesting part. I don't know, how is that connected? So go ahead. What were you going to say, Maddie?
I feel a bit squeamish reading that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Agreed.
a bit gross.
So, well, I guess it depends on the person's diet, but I personally, I eat steak and I'm okay with it. And I like a good grilled fish. And so the fish is going to be taken care of by the ox, the animal, the behemoth, and vice versa with the animal is going to be slaughtered by the fish, by the Leviathan, and they're going to be served. And you're right, the slaughtering part does seem a little interesting, and there's actually very specific laws about how to slaughter, and it's just interesting to note that it literally has to be so sharp that if it's something that perhaps won't be able to kill in one moment, it's not considered kosher. So teeth, fingernail, all those things with strangle are not considered kosher. And Rabbi Avin just adds to it, and he says,
how could you kill something with a fingernail? I don't get it.
Well, I mean, if you imagine you have a little bird and you have a big finger, and you could, I guess so. I don't know. I guess in the Talmud times there was law, right? They have to use every possible avenue of what may be used. But either way, good news is it's not kosher to be done that way. But what I find nice, is that we see from here that there'll be this Leviathan, this Shor Habar, and we're gonna feast on it. But now what's really cool, where is it gonna be? Who's gonna be eating it? Let's see text 2. So this part is awesome. This is actually, it's a famous text. And Gail, if you've learned, from the Talmud, this is actually, you're going to be learning it soon in the Daf Yomi. It's in Tractate Pesachim, which is the 4th tractate of the Talmud, 3rd tractate of the Talmud. It's a really nice one. And it's going to talk about not only the meal, but who's going to do the blessing, the grace after meals. If you've been to my home, we do what's called Birkat HaMazon, the blessing after the meal. But someone always leads it. It's an honor to lead this. So who's going to lead it? Let's find out here. Leslie, I have you next on my screen. Leslie, do you want to read this? Okay. If you're looking in a student...
In the future.
Yep, go ahead. If you're in your student book, it's on 66, or you could just read it from the screen, whatever's easier for you.
Okay. In the future, God will prepare a feast for the righteous on the day that he extends his mercy to the descendants of Isaac. After they eat and drink, the celebrants will give Abraham, our father, a cup of blessing to recite the blessing. Abraham will say to them, I will not recite the blessing, for the wicked Ishmael came from me.
Interesting. He's saying I have a flaw. So let's see who he gives it to. Go ahead. Oh, you could continue. It's a pretty long text, actually.
Abraham will say to Isaac, take the cup and recite the blessing. Isaac will say to them, I will not recite the blessing, as the wicked Esau came from me. Isaac will say to Jacob, take the cup and recite the blessing. Jacob will say to them, I will not recite the blessing, as I married 2 sisters in their lifetimes, and the Torah would later forbid them to me. Jacob will say to Moses, take the cup and recite the blessing.
It's quite amazing, because all these giants will be there, so they're all having this discussion: who should do the blessing, and they're all with humility saying, "I'm not worthy." So now it's Moses' turn. Let's see what he says.
Moses will say to them, I will not recite the blessing, as I did not merit to enter Israel, neither in my life nor in my death. Moses will say to Joshua, take the cup and recite the blessing. Joshua will say to them, I will not recite the blessing, as I did not merit to have a son. Joshua will say to David, take the cup and recite the blessing. David will say to them, I will recite the blessing, and it is fitting for me to recite the blessing as it is stated, I will lift up the cup of salvation, and I will call upon the name of God.
And that final line is a verse from Psalms, which was authored by King David. We actually recite that or sing that in our Havdalah, the separation ceremony between Shabbat and the week. In the Hebrew, the words are Kos Yeshuot Esa Uveshem Adonai Ekra. It's a beautiful verse. So the story is so awesome. It's like predicting what's going to happen at this meal, who's going to lead the grace, the blessing. And all the way from Abraham, it goes to Isaac, his son Yitzchak, and then to Yaakov, to Moshe, to Joshua, who was his successor, and finally to David. And David says, I'll do it. I'm the worthy person. So that's the story. And we're going to have to unpack all of this. There's even a famous song, they sing it in Yiddish, a very cantorial song sung by a chazan, a cantor whose name is Cantor Helfgott. And he does a beautiful job singing this, predicting what's going to happen, quoting this Talmud. But the Talmud actually continues that the righteous, these people, they will apportion the meal, meaning they're going to be giving out plates, according to the mitzvahs that we performed in the world. So those who perform mitzvahs primarily with their legs, they were always running and ambitious to do mitzvahs, they will eat the thighs, the leg portions of the animal. And those who ate did a lot of mitzvahs with their hands, like charity, they will eat other parts of the animal. So it also says different details of those who were involved this year of vicious parts or vicious activities with animals. Let's say if they were hunting, if they were hunters as a sport or as an expedition, they will be barred from partaking in this meal. Pretty cool. So the Midrash informs us that this is a meal as an honor for those who are careful with the mitzvah of shechita, the mitzvah of eating kosher animals in the correct way, which is through slaughtering, that this is a reward for those people. So this is the text. I just gave you a little more of the color, but the questions are obvious. What is going on here? What are we talking about? This feast, this banquet? So the point of tonight's class is to set up the magic, the mysticism, and the practice of what this meal means to me. So we'll uncover the mystery of this meal, this banquet, and try to make that magic speak to me and you. So before we do anything, we ought to figure out whether we should take this seriously. Is this a real meal? A real fight going on between an ox and a fish? Or best, is it just a metaphor with some very deep meaning and symbolism? So there's a debate, of course. If you've been to my classes, we like quoting debates. And the Rambam, which is usually a very high-end authority in Torah, he says, as we're going to see right now in text 3, and if you're looking in a book, it's on 68, he says, text 3, let's find out. Frida, I have you next on the screen. Frida, do you want to read? Oh, I'm sorry, Frida, you're muted. If you look at the bottom left of your screen, if you're on a computer, usually you can mute yourself there.
Okay, I'm sorry. The good beyond which there can be other good. This was the good desired by all the prophets. The sages referred to this good which is prepared for the righteous by the metaphor feast.
So according to the Rambam, he's just talking about the goodness that's to come. You can't wait to see the goodness that's going to be happening. The amount of sheer love in the world, the amount of light that's just going to be appreciated and felt and seen and radiating. So it's going to be so good. We're going to have to give it, the Rambam says, we're calling it a name. We're calling it like a delicious feast. But he's referring to that era, to that time of Mashiach. So from the Rambam, it's more metaphorical. And that's fine. We're still going to learn the metaphor of it. But many of the other authorities actually say, the overwhelming consensus of the authorities say that while there's certain mystical elements to it, there will actually be a physical meal. I will be there, you will be there, we'll celebrate together with good wine, with good food, and party. And this is from the Maharsha, which is, if anyone has studied Talmud, he's on a lot of the footnotes. He gives a beautiful commentary through almost the entire Talmud. He was the rabbi of Posen, Poland, and he died in 1632. So his name is Rabbi Shmuel, but he's known as an acronym as the Maharsha. And he says the following. Robin, do you want to read this one?
Know this, we ought to believe all these matters in their simple literal sense. Though many commentaries interpret it in various ways, they do not supplant the plain meaning.
Awesome. So there's a plain meaning, and later we're actually going to see the metaphor that he also adds. So he explains it as a plain meaning, but he's also going to enlighten us with some beautiful metaphor that's really, really stunning. It's just like a gorgeous commentary, and we'll see that soon. So just to summarize, when Mashiach comes, there will be this very festive meal, and on the menu, there will be a fish called Leviathan. There will be some good ribeye and meat called shor habar, or Maddie in her text referred to it as behemoth, and very good, delicious wine. We're going to learn more about what this food is like, but it's going to be a real meal with some good metaphor, and we'll try to understand the specifics about it, and we'll do that now. So this is just the grand banquet, and it's going to look fancier than this with better centerpieces, but this is just an idea. But now we're going to go to, now that we have some details, let's explain more to this part 2, which is a giant fish, ox, and extraordinary wine. So we'll unpack each of these menu items and understand really what it's all about. So the Leviathan is well sourced in many texts. It dates back, as I said earlier, I think before we started recording, that today is the day the world was created, the 25th of Elul, and on the 4th day of the creation, on the 5th day of creation, it says these words, and God created the great sea monsters. There was monsters that God created. It was sea monsters. So what type of sea monsters is this? So right away, Rashi, the greatest commentary on the Torah, Rashi tells us it's referring to the Leviathan. So that's as early as we know, already from the 5th day of creation, it's talked about. But it's mentioned a total of 5 times in Scripture, referring to the Leviathan, referring to this fish. And a more detailed description can be found in the Talmud, which we love quoting. So we're going to learn about it from the Talmud Bava Basra, which is actually the longest tractate of Talmud. Gail, for trivia, do you know how many pages are in tractate Bava Basra? It's the longest one.
No, I wish I knew, but I don't.
Here's a good Jewish trivia fact. The longest Talmud, the longest portion of the Torah, and the longest chapter of Psalms each have the same number. The longest Talmud is 176 pages long. The longest Torah portion is 176 verses long. And the longest chapter of Psalms is 176 verses long as well, chapter 119. So just some good facts. Let's see. Gail, I have Marcia Berger, I have you next on the screen. So we're going to see now from the Talmud that originally there was both male and female. Could you imagine this Leviathan, this fish, was male and female? But God actually had to take one away because it was going to overtake the world and it wouldn't have left any space for anyone. So God actually took one away, and that's the fish that we're going to eat when Mashiach comes. Mrs. Berger, you could unmute yourself and read text 5 or read it on page 69 on your book. Go for it. Just unmute yourself first. There you go.
Okay, so Elul 25 is my Jewish birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday. May it be a year of success, health, joy, nachas.
Amen. And I wish the same to everybody here in good health.
Amen. We need it. We need all the brachas, all the blessings. All right, go for it, Mrs. Berger.
All right. Rav Yehuda said, in the name of Rav, everything that the Holy One, blessed be He, created in His world, He created male and female. Even Leviathan, the rod serpent, and Leviathan, the tortoise serpent, He created male and female. Had they coupled and produced offspring, they would have destroyed the entire world. What did the Holy One, Baruch Hu, do? He castrated the male and killed the female and salted the female to preserve it for a banquet for the righteous in the future. As it is stated, and He will slay the serpent that is in the sea.
Interesting. All right. Interesting. So one thing that for me at least stands out is he's castrating the male and killing the female. He could have just done one and not the other. So the commentaries, Rashi and several others, explain a few different reasons of why. The reason why he still had to castrate the male is because maybe the male would procreate with another species, and that still would be a danger to all of us, to society. So obviously a lot to talk about here, but I'll just give you a little more color than beyond what was just read, that besides for this male and female, it gives us also a description of what they're like. It says their eyes, actually I just saw a bunny rabbit yesterday that someone in our community has as a pet. It's an albino type of bunny rabbit. Sorry, and it has red eyes. I found it very interesting. A white bunny rabbit with like very stark red eyes. But it says that these eyes are going to be like the great luminaries, like the sun and the moon in the eyes of the Leviathan. That's how massive. And it sits in the Great Sea, and it drinks from the runoff of the Jordan River. And its breath, when it's hungry, its breath is so hot that it could boil all the oceans. That's what it talks about. Okay, I'll skip a little more. Okay, when it's thirsty, it drinks so much in one shot that it leaving a crater in the seabed so deep that it doesn't refill for 70 years. Even the angels, it says, are afraid to battle with these Leviathan. The only one that's going to battle it is the ox, the one that we shared before, the Shor Habar. This is a really cool part. I think it's going to be very smelly, but with this fish, when again it was killed, and the fish, every part is going to be used. We're going to eat the fish, but the skin, I don't like eating the skin of a fish. I don't know if anyone here does, unless you're very Ashkenazi. And then maybe, but for your average person with a little bit of Sephardic blood, like you don't eat the fish skin. I don't know, but for those that do eat it, it says that the sukkah, we're going to eat in a big sukkah. We're all going to sit in the same sukkah. The sukkah walls is going to be made from the skin of this fish, which I find to be pretty smelly. I don't know, but apparently it's going to be beautiful. This is the same skin that was used just in history for those that learned from the opening chapters of the book of Bereshit of the Torah. The skin that was used to clothe Adam and Eve was from the skin of this fish. And the same clothing that Jacob wore when he went into his father to trick him to get the blessings with he had to put on this heavy skin. It was with this fish, this skin coming from this fish. In short, it's the choicest of all fish, but it has spirit-like qualities. But now let's unpack the Shor Habar. I'm just trying to give you a little bit of color of what's really going on. But the next part of the class, the last part, is really awesome, where we got a little bit of the metaphors. Oh, really? Is fish skin the best part? Okay, I have some Sephardic blood in me, and the most I could eat of fish is gefilte fish. But let's find out more of the ox. So now we're going to be... So for those that learned the book of Job, it's one of the books of Tanakh of the Torah. It's actually mentioned in there, but as Maddie was quoting before, it's mentioned as behemoth, which means an animal literally, instead of the ox. But it's known that that's referring to this ox. And I'll show you some sources, but some people say that it has a counterpart. Like I think we quoted before. I'm just reading the text again. But what's really cool is the Shor Habar, this ox, is massive. It grazes on 1,000 mountains, meaning it eats from the grass of 1,000 mountains. So anyway, I could spend more time on this, but I'd rather get to the next part of the class with the metaphors. I see a question coming in about the Leviathan, the serpent, all that. I was just saying that they were all created male and female. Let me just go back to that to answer your question, Marcia. Right, the serpent. Oh, you're saying what is the rod serpent?
Well, yeah, I mean, is there supposed to be a comma after Leviathan? Are they two different things, or is it one?
Oh yeah. Sorry, it's two different things. In the Hebrew, I don't think in the book itself you would see the Hebrew. It's the Leviathan and the Nachash and the snake. Yeah, they're two separate things.
Well, thank you.
You are welcome. But now the coolest part, for those that enjoy some wine or consider yourselves connoisseurs, this is the most aged wine you would find. I mean, I think I saw somewhere that someone recently, like a year ago, found a wine from like the 1700s, and it went for like tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. Like I think for like a shot of this wine, you had to pay an enormous amount. Did anyone read that in the news last year? Like I don't have an interest for it. But apparently, watch this text from Brachot. So for those that recently have been studying Talmud, could be that you've studied this. But text 6 talks about this wine, and it says a really cool statement about it. In the Torah, it says, no eye has seen it. There's something so delightful and pleasurable that no one had a chance to see it. What is it referring to? So let's see. Let's see, Gail, I have you up next. This is from the Talmud. Let's see what it says.
Wow. What is this reward about which it is stated? No eye has seen it. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, oh, that's the wine that's been preserved in its grapes since the 6 days of creation and which no eye has ever seen.
Awesome.
I'm sorry. I think it would be pretty terrible.
Oh, really? No, the more aged the wine is, someone actually for Hanukkah gifted me a bottle of wine from 2008. And I checked it up. I don't know much about wine. And apparently it's like a bottle that's worth like $200. Like he was so proud to give it to me. And I don't want to touch it. Like I'm saving it. And it's going to age more. Eventually I'll be able to sell it for a pretty penny. But the point I guess I'm trying to make.
No, Rabbi, there is a certain amount of time that you have to, then it gets past that time and it's not good. So drink the wine now while you can enjoy it.
All right.
Unless you look up and see how longer it can go. So once again, I'm looking at this and thinking, okay, metaphor, because in reality, that wouldn't be good.
Well, maybe, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. I think it's going to be a really good wine, and I'm gonna take. I want to drink it, so I'm going to believe it, and then maybe David will give me a cup of it because he's the one that apparently is going to be doing the blessing. But point is, in the Torah it says in the book of Isaiah, no one has seen it. No eye has seen it. What is it referring to? The Talmud says it's referring to this wine that it's stored and it's being. All right, Adrian, is someone tell me that it's like vinegar. It's not like whiskey that takes years. Aha, so you're saying wine is not good aged. I don't know. I mean, it says about Jacob that what did he send back to Jacob after he was telling him the news that I'm alive? He gave him aged wine. That's what it says. Yain Yashan. It says it in the Torah as something that Jacob was gifted by his son. So I guess you're saying that too aged wine is not good. I don't know. I'm going that it's good. But the point is, the point of this section was just to give you a little bit of background of the of what each part is going to be. Okay, so hold on one second. Just give you a little bit of a review. We have the Grand Banquet, the Leviathan, the Sharabar, and the Yain HaMeshumar, which means the special wine, are all quite unique with various fascinating details, which we just gave. But now this is where I want to spend a little bit more time on. This is the mystical meal with meaningful messages. And this is really going to be awesome. On the face of it, the meal is downright mysterious. Like all parts of it seems odd or interesting, magical, but we have to unpack this magic and make it real. So let's interpret it. What we're going to do this evening, I'm going to select for you a few of the beautiful interpretations. We're going to start with one from the Maharal, Rabbi Yehuda Lowy, and the Maharal explains, and then we're going to do a few others. But the Maharal is really gorgeous, and he says like this. And actually what sets him apart from the others is that the Maharal, Rabbi Yehuda Lowy, we've quoted him before in this class, he was the creator of the Golem in the late 1500s in Czechoslovakia and Prague. And contrary to other noted scholars, he explains the entire meal as a metaphor. So we're going to see how he learns about this meal. Like you were saying, the wine, according to the Maharal, is not real wine. He's saying it's going to be it's a mysterious metaphor that we have to just understand. And in brief, what we have to explain, and we'll see the text in a moment, but just to explain it, he says that Mashiach will usher in the ultimate perfection. We'll see real perfection. Things will be not flawed the way we see it now. Things will be flawless. Things will be in their perfect state. And to see the true perfection, we'll see the sizes of the Leviathan and the Sharabar, which are like the ultimate perfection. Such a big, beautiful, almost like majestic animal that it has an amazing perspective. And Maddie's just adding, it's not like whiskey that takes years. It seems like, it seems like from our limited human perspectives, we can't even imagine this. That's true. In Yiddish, we call it klein kappeldik. It's almost like our narrow minds can't imagine such a time of this perfection. But the closest we could get to it is studying and discussing it and almost imagining it and awaiting it. And that's really awesome, Maddie. That's what we're doing. So that's cool.
I also mean, like, when you talk about the fish the way you're talking about it and the wine the way you're talking about it, for us here in 2020, in our limited view of what that is, we're already judging it based on the wine that we know. But if it's such a spiritual, highly evolved thing that's going to be happening, which is like heaven on earth and just the most incredible wine you've ever tasted in your life, it's probably not even anything like any of us have ever tasted and what we think of as wine.
Very well said. That's true. So we can't even imagine what it's like. Well said.
Right.
Thank you. I like that. Okay, so he considers the future meal that we're talking about, this grand banquet. He's saying that's just the reward, not that it's going to be a physical meal, but it's Mashiach is a time of the reward for what we will receive for enduring the hardships of exile. Yes, sometimes exile feels like a bitter hell. From everything our ancestors endured to what we are enduring, Hashem will say, wow, you did amazing. You persevered through it. Let me show you what you did. Let me show you the true perfection of the world. So we're going to experience the truth behind everything. It's going to be the reward for the compensation for what we endured. So the grace, which is the blessing that we quoted before, that Moses turns to David, and that whole story of who's going to be doing that grace, that blessing at the end, is the gratitude for being able to see the full perfection, for being able to see the true glory of what's to come. And who's best to carry that out? That's going to be King David. Everyone else on that roster, from Abraham to Yaakov to Moses, everyone else who represents the true perfection of redemption, that's going to be David. Let's see it inside. It's going to be some pretty beautiful words. Again, it's a little Kabbalistic and with the metaphor, but let's try to unpack it. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a background before we read it. Vivian, if you are with us, I would love for you to read the text of the Maharal. Let me pull it up. Mystical meal, go for it. This world.
Okay, this world is not meant to be a unified, perfect world until Mashiach comes. Then there will be no war. Rather, it will be a unified world without any division or fragmentation. This is the idea of the future banquet. Banquet means reward for enduring the tremendous suffering of exile. Receiving this reward is called a banquet. This banquet is not a physical thing, rather a time to receive reward, which can be called banquet. In line with this, the participants of this banquet offer a cup to Abraham to recite grace, for every meal is followed with blessing, for a person ought to thank God, the source of all blessing. There were no other tzaddikim, righteous people, like David. All others possessed a certain deficiency. This doesn't detract from their greatness. To the contrary, they were so great that it was only inevitable that their greatness would entail some sort of deficiency. David, by contrast, had no deficiencies, and thus he is best suited to recite grace. King David was similar to the future King Moshiach, which is why Moshiach will descend from him. David and Moshiach share the theme of bringing the world to perfection, which is the principal quality of future times. Oh, I like that.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I just need to digest these words. I'm going to keep the screen on here for a moment. Wow, thank you, Vivian. So just to summarize from the Maharal, from this commentary, he's saying that he explains it on a non-literal level. He says that the banquet is just referring to us experiencing reward for us enduring hardships of exile. And therefore we'll say the grace. It's our blessing. It's our thank you for being able to participate in reward. But who will be the one to lead it? That has to be King David. Why David? Because David, and this is a little bit tricky, and I'm just glossing over these words. There were no other tzaddikim like David. All others possessed a certain deficiency. Oh, and
I have a question.
Sorry, Maddie, let me just finish. I just realized I was reading in the book as well with Vivian, and I apologize for realizing that that I didn't finish the last screen. So I know Vivian read it, but over here it just says that David, I hope everyone's listening, it says that David doesn't have deficiencies. And that's similar to King David as Mashiach, that Mashiach will be a descendant of David, and that's a world of perfection. And therefore, Mashiach, which is the time of perfection, will be brought about by King David, and Mashiach, which is the epitome of that perfection. So one of the reasons why I just love this this expression, I'm just going to go back a second. I just find this to be very interesting. The last line, I would love to hear how everyone understands it. They were so great that it was only inevitable that their greatness would entail some sort of deficiency. It's a very deep statement, I think. When a person is too great for something, and they're in a place of flaws, almost they can't express themselves properly. Almost, it's like a person who's a genius, but you put him around people that can't appreciate it, he can't talk their language, he's not appreciated, and he can't communicate. He's frustrated, he gets angry. Or perhaps as a person that's so smart, his brain can't, his body can't handle it, and he has a nervous breakdown. I think what it's saying is, it's not detracting from the greatness of the others, it's just saying that because of their greatness, there's some sort of deficiency in how it's expressed in the world. Whereas King David, and I would love to hear other people's feedback, King David was not handcuffed like the others because that was his job. His job is about bringing godliness. David was the epitome of a king of Israel, and his job was to bring, as a king is to reflect the model of worship to God and bringing godliness into the world. And I think David somehow possessed that. I'm just reading the words. It's a pretty heavy statement. So anyway, all this is from the Maharal, and I'll take questions, but I just hope it's clear that the Maharal is learning this on a non-literal level, that Mashiach is a time when it's going to be the time of true perfection. So this banquet is not a real banquet. It's just a time of perfection happening in its fullest. So it's not real wine. It's just the epitome of everything in their best perfect state. It's really the time that we will be rewarded for everything we've been doing. That's King David is the perfect person to bring that home. Yes, Maddie, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, thank you so much for that. I just was curious about where Elijah is in all of this, since that's what you talked about last week. And
the week before. So now Elijah, I think he should have a pretty big role here, right?
Well, I thought that that Elijah was going to be the one that brings in Mashiach, not David. Is that not right?
Yes, that is right. So Elijah, what's interesting is there's two parts, and that's a great question, Maddie. Elijah is going to be the one to give us the news that Mashiach is coming. But the Mashiach himself is going to be a king, and that's going to be actually a descendant of David. So Elijah is the epitome of the time we're going to be living through. He's going to be the one to let us know that the time has come. But who will the king be to negotiate peace and to bring unity and to bring the true soul of the Jew and the spirit alive
Thank you so much. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, so, and you're right, I'm wondering, so David, he's not passing it up, right? He gets the cup of wine, and he says, I'm the right person for it. Whereas, everyone else is passing it up, because David somehow epitomizes perfection. Now, what's interesting is David actually has mistakes that he made in life. Talmud actually goes through mistakes, but I think part of that is the beauty, where that's actually where his perfection comes out, because he grappled with life, with world, with struggles, with real challenges, right? You can't argue that Moses was the most humble. The Torah says Moses was more humble than anyone else. So we're not saying that David is greater than that. We're just saying David is the epitome of what Mashiach stands for, of this perfection, of seeing it all come together. And that's why, this is from Rabbi Yehuda Loew, and he's explaining this banquet on a metaphorical level. Okay, let's go a little further. This one is going to be a beautiful combination. I'm a big fan of this one. It's Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. He was a Hasidic master, a disciple of the Maggid, the second Rebbe after the Baal Shem Tov, and he was a colleague of the Alter Rebbe who authored the Tanya that we're learning. They actually had their grandchildren marry each other, and Levi Yitzchak is my son's name, so it's which also was the name of the Rebbe's father. So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev was a giant of a scholar, and he says like this. He says that the Torah contains many secrets. Some, and a lot of you on this class are fans of this, some of the secrets are Kabbalah, right? The secrets of the Torah, the esoteric mysticism behind the simple meaning. So in addition to all the Kabbalah that we are now studying, what will happen when Mashiach comes, the secrets of Torah that will be taught and will be studied and explored and learned and understood when Mashiach comes will be mind-blowing secrets above and beyond anything that we're learning now. Again, the Torah, the secrets, the Kabbalah, the truth of Torah that we will study when Mashiach comes will be incomparably greater than what we know now. So many understand this grand banquet as a metaphor for the revelation of the secrets. We'll all get together. We have the best teachers of all Jewish history there, and they're going to teach new dimensions of Torah, new meanings of Torah, layers that were never uncovered before. So just as food, the reason why it's referred to as a banquet, this mystical teachings and dimensions being revealed, is because just like food is ingested internally, it enters into our bloodstream, and it energizes us. That's what happens with food. It becomes part of us. The novel Torah that will be taught when Mashiach comes will internalize, will ingest like food, and it will enter our bloodstream, which means it will enter our consciousness. It will enter the truth. It will become our norm. It will become part of us. Right now, we learn Torah, and then we get back to what we're doing. But we'll internalize the messages and the secrets of the Torah, these mind-blowing dimensions, but it'll become like ingested in us. It'll become our very norm. And as we were exploring before about the wine, this wine is actually a metaphor for the deepest secrets, because the Talmud says in several places, Nichnas yayin yatsa sod. What happens when you drink wine? Our secrets come out. Some people, it's beautiful. When they get a little tipsy or buzzed, they get so laughable. They laugh. They're joyous. They give more charity. Whatever it is, they're in a happy mood. There's some people, they drink a little bit too much, and they're angry, and they're sad, and they cry, and they're uptight. And it's incredible to see. But the truth is, when we drink, our secrets come out. We say things that usually we won't say. I'm not going to get into the point of that. But over here, what's the point for this is that the wine that will be served at this banquet is actually a metaphor for the secrets that will be revealed. The wine as a secret is the metaphor for the revelation. But here's the kicker. Here's the beautiful part. So over here, I've been explaining that it's still a metaphorical meal with this beautiful food that is the new dimensions of Torah that we're going to be ingesting. And the wine is the deeper secrets that we'll be learning. But Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, this Hasidic master of the town of Berditchev in Russia, he also continues to explain that it doesn't detract from the notion that there will be a literal meal. It will be a physical feast, but it'll have two dimensions. Some that are more primitive will enjoy just the taste, but those that are more spiritually attuned will be able to appreciate the secrets being revealed. So just to explain that last part, the meal will be perfect for everyone on their level. For those that don't really have it, are not tuned into the secrets and to the Kabbalah, they'll just enjoy the taste. It's going to be medium rare or however you like it. It'll be perfect. But for those that enjoy the secrets of the Torah, they'll be able to ingest and learn and explore that as well. Let's see that inside. I find that to be a stunning teaching. And Ava, if I have you up on the screen, again, this is from Kedushas Levi, which is Reb Levi Yitzchak Berditchev. So even if you didn't understand everything I just said, let's look at it inside. It's a gorgeous, a really classic. Go for it, Ava.
Okay. The future banquet for the righteous will be experienced on two levels. One, as a simple meal, and another, it will be a spiritual opportunity to uncover the secrets of Torah, as explained in the Zohar. They are both true. For more ordinary folk, whose conception of pleasure is limited to the material, it will be a physical meal. For the righteous, whose conception of pleasure is secrets of Torah, the meal will be an opportunity to uncover great wonders of the Torah.
Let me turn the page. Hold on. No, I think you got all of it. Perfect. So again, this is from Reb Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, and the point in short is that the secrets of the Torah will be coming out when Mashiach comes, the deepest secrets. And for when will those secrets be? When we have that meal, we'll have the great teachers. They'll be discussing it. We'll be learning it. And for those that get it and are attuned to it, they'll appreciate that. For those that are not, they're still going to enjoy the delicious wine and good meal all together with the rest of us. Awesome. So it's like a combination. But now we're going to learn, finally, his colleague, the first Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi. And I'll just stop sharing the screen for a second. I hope everyone could see me. Maybe this will make it a little bit easier to understand. He explains, the Alter Rebbe explains something stunning. He explains that this meal, this banquet, it'll be a divergent path of two types of tzaddikim. The Leviathan and the Shor Habar are representing two types of personalities. But when Mashiach comes, they'll be blended together. They'll be on the same plate. They'll experience true perfection. What does that mean? To explain, we're going to read it inside, but it's a little deceiving because it's such short words that explain such a beautiful, like from the Alter Rebbe, that explains such a beautiful message. So he says like this. We know, and some of you have been in my home in our backyard for a beautiful holiday on the Jewish calendar. It's not so known, but it's called Lag BaOmer. It's in May, and it celebrates the author of Jewish mysticism, of Kabbalah, who authored the Zohar. His name was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. For those that were on our Jeopardy on Saturday night, that was one of the questions of who authored the Zohar. So before he died, the Romans wanted to kill him for studying Torah, for teaching Torah, for talking negatively about the Romans. So he had to hide with his son for 13 years. During those 13 years, he attained an incredible new heights. He was in a cave. All he had to eat and drink was a boxer tree, a carob tree, and a stream of water. That's what he lived off. It says he actually he dug deep in the sand, and he actually spent most of his day in the sand studying Torah because he didn't want to ruin his clothing, and it was cooler in the sand. Him and his son on a spiritual bliss. Did he put on tefillin? Nope, didn't have tefillin. He was living, did he eat matzah? Nope, no one provided matzah. No one knew where he was. He was living an entirely spiritual life, removed, separated, aloof from the rest of the world. By contrast, so many of us, we do a lot of righteous things. We have a spiritual bliss on Shabbos, but our service is not to do that. That's not our service to run away. For most of us, our service is to work, to provide, to give charity, to take world, mundane material, and not ignore it. On the contrary, transform it. So Rabbi Shimon, this great tzaddik I referred to you before, he ignored it all. He was removed completely from it. Whereas many others, most others, are not removed from it. On the contrary, we tackle it. And we work to transcend and transform it. So it turns out there's two types of services. Even among the pious, there's those who work with physical matter, like us, and those very unique few who engage exclusively with the spirit, exclusively with the divine, with the sublime. Which one is better? Each is not better than the other. Each possesses a certain quality that the other doesn't. The spiritual giant, like Rav Shimon, they climb higher and higher, but they never have the quality of transformation because they're ignoring the rest of the world. While the tzaddik, the pious, that is in the trenches and working to transform, they actually become the king of transformation. Amazing. When working in a playing field that is so low with such mud, the heights you could reach as a result, as limited as they are, you go really high. So that's the ox, the brute ox, and is a symbol of materialism. And it's working to transform world. But the fish, the Leviathan, is the fish who swims. And we know that anything in water is concealed from the world. It's something it's living on their own level, their own world, so to speak. And spiritually, Kabbalistically, everything in the water is a higher, deeper level than the way we have it on earth. So the Leviathan, which is in the water, is almost on a only spiritually attuned level, and something that we really don't comprehend. So the final showdown, this fight between the fish and the ox before the banquet, is these two creatures working with each other, slaughtering each other. It's signifying climbing both types of holy people, those that are working on transformation, like the ox, and those working on their own spiritual growth, with aloof from the rest of the world. That's symbolized in the fish. They're both working to gain the perfection of the other. Each will lend to their counterpart what they don't have. Each will lend to their counterpart what the other doesn't have, and catapulting to a new pinnacle of godly revelation. So just to summarize this, I want to see the text inside, but it's an amazing text that we're going to be reading, that it's metaphorical, but it has a very practical relevance, not only when Mashiach comes, but according to this, it has a practical relevance today. It's the idea that there's those tzaddikim. And for those that are learning Tanya with me, where we learned in chapter 10 of Tanya, of the tzaddik that still has a little bit of a struggle, and the tzaddik like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who's gifted beyond everyone else. It's almost like a gift from God that we can't really attain unless God shows you to be that person. Like Rabbi Shimon, who was able to be so spiritually aloof, that is not our calling. But if there are those that are spiritually aloof, that's like the fish. And there are those that we're not aloof, we're spiritual, but we're involved in transformation. We're involved in work. We're involved in the mundane and taking the energy of life, of world, and making it utilized for holiness, for Shabbat, for kosher, for charity, for relationships. That's symbolized in the ox, like the meat. And each one is catapulting with the other, and that's going to be the feast. The feast will be that perfect unity between both services that we're doing now in the world. Let's see that inside, and then we'll take questions. I'm sorry, I don't see the questions right now, but I just want to see this one. Wait a minute. No, that's not it. Hold on a second. I think I'm on the wrong screen because I did that part already. Here we go. That's better. This will be where we're up to. So now we're going to see a commentary from the Alter Rebbe. It's really, really nice. Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi. Adrian, did you have a chance to read yet?
No, not yet.
Perfect. So this is the most stunning text. Tell me what you think of it. Go for it.
There are two types of tzaddikim, the hidden ones whose religious service is spiritual in nature, namely with the intent of spiritual unifications. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who hid in a cave for 13 years, was one such tzaddik. While there, he certainly couldn't fulfill any mitzvot. After all, he lived off a carob tree and a stream created especially for him. You couldn't eat matzah on Passover, bake kiddush on wine, nor shake a lulav and etrog on Sukkot.
I just put up the second screen. Do you see it, Adrian? The second bit? Go for it.
The second type of tzaddik are those in plain view. They engage with material matter, performing physical mitzvot, which also draws down intense godly energy. Now the former type of tzaddik, called creature of the sea, climbs to dizzying heights like fish that swiftly swim from one end of the sea to the other. These tzaddikim swiftly climb to greater heights than those who work with the material, bogged down as they are with lowly matter. In future times, the Leviathan will battle the Shor Habar and slaughter it with his fins. The second type of tzaddik is represented by the Shor Habar, whose engagement with material matter is obviously not simply to fill their bellies with meat and revel in it, God forbid, rather to sublimate it, namely, to fuel a passionate rejoicing with God, inasmuch as their path is inferior to the spiritual tzaddik. The Leviathan will thus slaughter the Shor Habar, namely, she will elevate it.
Final, I think this is the last part of it. Go for it.
The reality is that the Shor Habar will also elevate the Leviathan, for in a certain way, the Shor Habar tzaddik performs a greater service. Though this path is mired in material matter, the fact is that this is what the Torah prescribes. You shall rejoice in your festivals. Joy is only with meat and wine. From this perspective, the Shor Habar will elevate the Leviathan.
So this is, I want to make sure I'm explaining this right. Thank you, Adrian, so much. Well read. And it's an amazing text if we get the perspective of the Alter Rebbe. It's almost deceivingly simply written, but such beautiful things. So there's tantalizing lessons that are meant for me and you to really take home based on what we just read. And I just want to be able to explain that and make sense out of it. So with all the imagery of the wine and the meat and the fish, it's going to taste delicious, but he's grounded, the Alter Rebbe grounds things and explains us that they represent two very real dimensions of life. Not two tzaddikim only, that either you're this way or you're that way. In truth, in my life, in my day, I experience both services, both parts, and you do as well. There are certain elements of our week that are very spiritual. When we're in prayer, or we're doing kiddush, or we're lighting candles, we're kind of spiritually removed from the world. We're in our own zone when we're meditating, when we're feeling that divine channel strong and healthy. But most of the day, we're very involved in world. We're very involved in home, in work, in what we need to be doing. So we each have these two components to our service. There's a part that is like the Shor Habar, the ox, that is working on transformation. That's really what we should be doing most of our time, is in every part of our day, whether we're eating or sleeping or conversing or driving, we're really elevating parts of ourselves and elevating the things around us to be holy, to be attuned to spiritual climate. The charity we give from the money we earn from working. So really our whole work becomes holy. So it's all transformation. But there are also parts that are removed. Now the beauty is both of these converge, both of these come together. The Leviathan in Hebrew, which is that fish, that spiritual, and like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that's part of our day. Is that better? No, each one has their quality that excels. Each one has their quality that is so special. Not one greater than the other. Both are equally needed and both are equally valued even when Mashiach comes. So the good news is that everything accumulates into a greater sum. So it means the more kosher sandwiches we're eating, the closer we're getting to that finish line. When we finally get there, we'll see how, in truth, everything we've been doing all along actually brings us there. So the Leviathan service, which is more spiritual and aloof and attuned to that spiritual calling, it's going to merge with the other service, which is like the ox, which is worked on transformation. And that's going to be the story of the future. But the grassroots work is right now. It's well underway. That grassroots effort, which is now to work on that transformation and to work on a part of our anchor in prayer or Shabbat, to be spiritually attuned and block everything out, to be focused on the spiritual, both are needed. Not only when Mashiach comes are they going to converge, they're also supposed to be now. We're right now working on the grassroots effort. Who's doing it? I am. Who's doing it? You are. Each and every one of us have that obligation to be involved in transformation, like the ox in the banquet, and also the transcendence and spiritually removed, which is going to be in the Leviathan. I think that's really nice. Let's just wrap it up. I think, did everyone have a chance to read? I think we went around. Okay, good. So then I'm just going to read the last text. If you're looking in a book, it's on page 78, but I will pull it up on my screen for the final text. Here it goes. This is from the Rebbe, just to wrap it all up. The Leviathan slaughtering the Shor Bar is the sum total of our entire work during exile. I went a little too fast. Of transforming the world. Then the ultimate power of our religious devotion will be revealed, namely that the loftiest levels of godliness, like the Leviathan of the hidden world, which is in the fish, right, that's hidden, will be exposed in the matter of the Shor Habar in a revealed way. So that's from the Rebbe, who explained this who explains this in a talk from 1991. You can see on the bottom from 5751. So it's a really, really stunning explanation that it's a sum total of what we're doing now. Being involved in world, but at the same time delving in and allowing the hidden world to be exposed. And to make that in a revealed way is the work of the ox. So we just use this story of the banquet to really explain a little bit of the metaphor of what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. It'll be the reward of all our hard work. That's how the Maharal learns it. Or Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev learns that it's going to be learning the secrets of the Torah. Like with the wine, it's about delving into the secrets. And finally, we had the Alter Rebbe, who explains that it's actually referring to two types of services. The Leviathan and the Shor, the ox, are referring to the either more transcendent or more transformation type, and the meal is when they blend together and they each convene and reach greater heights. But we replicate this, like the Rebbe is saying, by doing our work now, and it'll bring us even closer to the redemption, to Mashiach. May it happen speedily. So just to summarize, on this final page, the Maharal interprets the grand banquet on a non-literal level as a reward for our commitment in exile, followed with grace that serves as thanks, but most, however, understand it as a literal meal with spiritual undercurrents. So that concludes the class. And I think those are just some, if you have the book, you can read some commentaries that come as a result. But that was awesome. I'm going to read some of the questions.